My parents didn't hover. They didn't inspect. They just were there. My father sat in one of the armchairs and watched the flames. My mother helped Sophia arrange more branches. They talked to the guests, gently, naturally. The older couple told them about their long drive. My mother listened like it was the most important story she'd ever heard. Later, when most of the guests had gone to their rooms, my parents and I sat together in the kitchen. The girls were helping Marcus clean up in the living room. We had mugs of tea. The old brass key glinted on the wall behind us. My father spoke first, quiet, thoughtful. This place, it's more than we ever built. I looked at him, surprised. He continued. Our hotels were beautiful, polished, perfect on paper. But this, he gestured around the small, warm kitchen. This has soul. You gave it soul. My mother reached across the table, took my hand. We were wrong, Elena. Not about loving the business, but about thinking it was the only way to succeed, the only way to be safe. We were afraid for you, and we pushed too hard. Tears came again, soft, steady. I was afraid too, I said, afraid I'd disappoint you forever, afraid I wasn't enough without the hotels. My father shook his head. You've always been enough. We just forgot to tell you. We sat in that quiet kitchen for a long time. No rush, no agenda, just three people who traveled a long, painful road back to each other. Before they left that note, my mother pulled me aside on the porch. The air was cold, but her hands were warm when she held mine. We'd like to help, she said. Not take over, not control, but if you ever need advice, a connection, or just someone to talk to about expansion, we're here. No strings, no ultimatums. I looked into her eyes, saw the same love that had carried me through childhood. The same love that had hurt so much when it tried to hold too tight. I'd like that, I said. Very much. My father joined us. He put his arm around my mother's shoulders, then around mine. We're proud of you, Elena, he said, not because of the building, because of who you became while building it. We watched them drive away under the stars, taillights fading down the long gravel road. I stayed on the porch until the cold crept in. Then I went back inside, locked the door softly, listened to the house settle, the creak of wood, the low hum of the fire dying down, the distant sound of my family laughing in the living room. Haven Homes wasn't just open, it was alive, and so were we. But even after that night, there was one more small, beautiful moment waiting, one that made everything feel complete. What happened 3 months later, when a letter arrived in the mail, from the very first guest who'd stayed with us and changed the way I saw everything we'd built. Keep listening. The heart of this story is still unfolding, and it's more beautiful than I ever imagined. Something they never saw coming. What was that secret dream? And how did two people who loved me more than life itself react when they realized I wasn't broken, but building? Keep listening. You won't believe what happened next. But what happened the very next day, when I walked into my tiny studio with nothing but a laptop, a sketchbook, and a heart full of quiet fire? The life I thought was mine. I grew up believing the world was safe, because my parents made it that way. My name is Elena. I turned 42 the year everything changed. But long before that phone call, long before the study door closed behind me, there was a girl who loved drawing houses. Not just any houses, beautiful ones. Ones with light pouring through tall windows, soft colors on the walls, corners that felt like hugs. That girl was me. Our family home sat on a hill above the ocean, white walls, red-tiled roof, a garden that smelled like roses and salt air. Every summer evening, my mother would call me in from the balcony where I sketched. Dinner, Elena. Come tell us about your day. Dinner was always the same table, same china, same silver. My father at the head, sleeves rolled up even though he wore suits all day. My mother beside him, hair still perfect after a full day of meetings. They talked about the hotels mostly. New linens arriving from Italy, a famous singer who booked the presidential suite, a storm that damaged the roof in Monterey. I listened. I always listened. Sometimes I'd draw little improvements on my napkin, a better lobby layout, softer lighting in the bar. They'd smile. That's my girl, my father would say. One day you'll fix all of it. I believed him, I really did. When I was 16, they took me on my first real tour. We flew to 3 cities in 1 week. I walked every lobby, every hallway, every suite. I touched the fabrics. I smelled the fresh flowers in every vase. My mother watched me the whole time, eyes shining. You feel it, don't you? She whispered once. The heartbeat of the place. I nodded. I did feel something, but it wasn't ownership. It was wonder. Wonder at how a space could make someone feel at home, even when they were far away. That wonder never left me, but the pressure did grow. College came. They wanted hospitality. I tried. I really tried. 2 years of classes about revenue management, guest relations, food costing. I was good at it. Top of my class in design electives. But the numbers, the endless spreadsheets, they made my head hurt and my heart feel small. One night I sat in my dorm and cried. Not loud, just quiet tears into my pillow. I called my mother. I don't think I can do this forever, I said. She was silent for a long time. Then she said very softly, You're tired, sweetheart. Sleep. We'll talk when you come home. I changed my major the next semester. Interior design. I told them over Christmas break. My father looked at his plate for a long minute. My mother touched my hand. If this makes you happy, she said, then we support you. But I heard what they didn't say. This is temporary. You'll come back. After graduation, I met Marcus. He was quiet, kind, funny in that dry way that made me laugh when I was tired. He designed logos and websites for small businesses, nothing glamorous. And he loved me without any conditions. We married in a small garden ceremony. My parents paid for everything, the dress, the flowers, the string quartet. They smiled in all the photos, but I saw the way my father's eyes lingered on me when I danced with Marcus, like he was waiting for me to change my mind. Then came Lily, then Sophia, 2 little girls with my dark hair and Marcus's gentle smile. Life became school runs, soccer practices, late-night sketches while the house slept. I started my studio in our garage, one client at a time. A pediatrician's waiting room, a young couple's first apartment, a bed and breakfast owner who wanted something cozy but elegant. Every finished project felt like breathing deeply for the first time. I wasn't rich, but I was mine. My parents helped. They always helped. They paid the girls' private school tuition when things were tight. They sent a check every month, just in case, my mother said. They invited us for Sunday lunches at the estate. Roast chicken, fresh bread, the girls running through the garden like I used to. But the questions started creeping in. When are you coming to work with us full time? You could redesign all the lobbies, Elena. Think of the impact. The managers are fine, but they're not blood. I smiled. I explained. I said I loved my work. I said the girls needed me home more. They nodded, but their eyes said, You're wasting your potential. My father turned 65. The retirement conversations began in earnest. He wanted to travel with my mother, see the places they'd only read about in travel magazines. But first, the hotels needed a new leader, family, someone who understood. They offered me everything, a corner office with ocean view, a salary that made my studio income look like pocket change, shares, a title, president. I said no. Every time, gently, with love. I'm building something too, I told them. Something small, but it's mine, and it matters to me. The last time we talked about it was over coffee at their kitchen island. My father looked older than I'd ever seen him. Tired. Not angry, just tired. We gave you the best of everything, he said quietly. We thought that would be enough to bring you home. My mother wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. We're not trying to hurt you, Elena. We're trying to protect what we built. For you, for the girls. I felt tears burn behind my eyes. I know, I whispered. I love you both so much, but I can't be someone I'm not. They didn't yell. They never did. They just looked at me with that deep, quiet sadness that hurts more than shouting ever could. A few weeks later came the call, the one I told you about in part 1. The study, the sunset, the words that changed everything. No more support, Elena. If you want your own path, walk it. I drove home that night with the windows down. The ocean air was cold. My hands shook on the wheel, but my mind was already turning. The next morning I woke up early. Marcus was still asleep. The girls were still asleep. I sat at the kitchen table with my bold sketchbook, the one I'd kept since college. Pages and pages of ideas I'd never shown anyone, not even Marcus. Not a side business, not small redesigns. A dream I'd buried so deep, I almost forgot it was there. A chain of my own, not hotels, not cold luxury, small, soulful guest houses, places where people came to heal, to rest, to remember who they were. Each one different, each one designed by me. Warm colors, soft textures, gardens, bookshelves, fireplaces in every room. I had sketches, locations in mind, a name, Haven Homes. I had never said it out loud, not to my parents, not to Marcus, not even to myself really, because saying it made it real, and real things could fail. But that morning, with the house quiet and my parents' words still echoing, I opened a new document on my laptop, and I typed 3 words at the top. Haven Homes, Phase 1. My heart was pounding, not from fear, from something fiercer. Hope. Real, terrifying, beautiful hope. But how does a 42-year-old woman with 2 teenagers, a mortgage, and no family money behind her even begin something like that? Where does she find the first dollar, the first property, the courage to tell her husband she's about to risk everything they have left? And what happens when her parents hear, months later, that their daughter isn't begging for help? She's quietly building something bigger than they ever imagined. Keep listening. The story is just beginning to unfold. The first week after that night in the study felt like walking through fog. Everything looked the same on the outside. The house, the girls laughing in the kitchen, Marcus kissing me goodbye before work. But inside me, nothing was the same. No more automatic deposit from my parents on the first of the month. No safety net if a client delayed payment. No quiet phone call to my mother, asking if they could help with Lily's upcoming school trip to the mountains. I had said I wanted independence. Now I had it. And it was colder than I expected. I didn't tell the girls right away. They were 15 and 17, old enough to sense something, but young enough that I still wanted to protect them from worry. So I kept the routine, made breakfast, packed lunches, drove them to school with the radio on low. But every time I passed the turn toward my parents' estate, my chest tightened. Marcus knew everything, of course. That first night, after I came home from the study, I sat on the edge of our bed and told him word for word. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he pulled me close. "We'll be okay," he said. His voice was steady, but I felt his heart beating fast against mine. He was scared too. He just didn't want me to carry it alone. We sat down the next morning at our little kitchen table, the one we bought secondhand when we first moved in. We looked at the numbers: mortgage, car payments, utilities, groceries, the girls' extracurriculars, Sophia's art classes, Lily's violin lessons. My studio had been growing slowly. 3 steady clients a month, a few one-off projects, enough to feel proud of, but not enough to replace what my parents had been covering. "We can cut back," Marcus said. "I'll take on more freelance work, nights if I have to." I nodded, but inside I was already thinking bigger, not just surviving, building. That same afternoon, I opened my laptop again. Haven Homes. The name still felt fragile on the screen, like it could disappear if I looked away too long. I had 3 rough sketches from years ago, small properties I'd imagined in quiet moments. One in a redwood forest up north, one by a quiet lake, one near the desert, with wide skies and simple adobe walls. Each one would be different. Not cookie-cutter luxury, not my parents' polished hotels. These would be places for people who needed to breathe again. Couples recovering from loss, artists seeking silence, tired parents wanting one weekend without schedules. Warm wood, handmade pottery, gardens you could actually walk in barefoot, fireplaces that smelled like cedar. I spent hours researching small properties for sale, zoning laws, renovation costs. I made lists, spreadsheets. I even drew floor plans by hand because the computer felt too cold for what I was dreaming. But dreams don't pay bills, so I also did the hard part. I called every client I'd ever worked with. "I'm taking on a few more projects right now. Do you know anyone who might need help with their space?" Some said yes. Some said they'd think about it. A few didn't call back. I lowered my rates just a little. Not enough to feel desperate, but enough to get the phone ringing more. I worked late. Marcus worked late. The girls noticed we were eating more pasta and less takeout. They noticed I wasn't buying new sketchbooks as often, but they didn't ask yet. I wasn't ready to answer. Then came the first real crack, Lily's violin recital. It was a big one, the spring showcase at her music school. Tickets were expensive. Not outrageous, but more than we had loose right then. Normally my mother would have sent a check without me asking. "Treat the girls," she'd say. This time, Nothing. I stared at the invoice on my phone. Marcus saw my face. "I'll pick up an extra logo job tonight," he said quietly. I shook my head. "No, we'll go. We'll figure it out." We did. We sold an old camera Marcus hadn't used in years. I took on a quick weekend redesign for a friend's cafe. We made it. Lily played beautifully. I cried during her solo, not just because she was perfect, but because I realized how close we'd come to missing it. That night, after the girls were in bed, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea that had gone cold. I thought about calling my parents, just to hear their voices, not to ask for money, just to connect. But I didn't. I was afraid they'd hear the tiredness in my voice and think, "See, you need us." Weeks turned into months. My studio picked up. A doctor's office wanted a full waiting room refresh. A young family asked me to design their nursery. Word started spreading. Slowly, but it spread. I kept working on Haven Homes in secret. I found the first property, a small, run-down inn on the edge of a redwood grove. 6 rooms, a big porch, a view that made you forget time existed. The asking price was low because it needed love, a lot of love. I drove up there alone one Saturday, walked the grounds, touched the peeling paint, sat on the steps and imagined fireflies in the summer evenings. It felt right, terrifyingly right. But I had no down payment. No bank would look at me twice, not with my income history tied so closely to my parents' generosity. I came home that night exhausted. Marcus was waiting up. "How was it?" he asked. I told him. Everything. The trees, the quiet, the way the light fell through the branches. Then I told him the price. He didn't flinch. He just took my hand. "Then we find a way," he said. We started saving every penny. We canceled streaming services we didn't need. We stopped eating out. Marcus sold more freelance pieces. I said yes to every small job, even the ones that paid almost nothing, but built my name. And then, something shifted. A former client, a woman who owned 3 small wellness retreats, called me out of the blue. "I heard you're looking for properties," she said. "Someone mentioned you were thinking bigger." I froze. "How did you know?" She laughed softly. "Word travels in our circles, Elena. I have a friend who's selling something that might interest you. And I'd like to invest, not a lot, but enough for a down payment, if you'll let me be part of it." I didn't know what to say. Tears came before words. That phone call changed the math. Not completely, but enough. Enough to make an offer. Enough to believe this might actually happen. My parents hadn't called. I hadn't called them. The silence between us grew longer, heavier. But I wasn't waiting for their approval anymore. I was moving forward, one small, scared, determined step at a time. But what happened when my parents finally heard, through someone else, that their daughter wasn't falling apart, that she was quietly buying her first property, that people were investing in her dream, not theirs? And how did they react when they drove up that long redwood road one afternoon and saw the sign going up? Haven Homes, coming soon. Keep listening. The real storm was just beginning. The offer on the redwood property went in quietly. No fanfare, no big announcement. Just a simple email to the realtor with the numbers we'd scraped together. My investor friend, the one who owned the wellness retreats, put up the largest part of the down payment. Marcus and I covered the rest with every last bit we'd saved, plus a small home equity line we opened on our house. It felt reckless. It felt right. We got the acceptance letter 2 weeks later. I stared at the screen for a full minute before I let myself breathe. Marcus came up behind me, read over my shoulder, and wrapped his arms around my waist. "We did it," he whispered. His voice cracked just a little. I turned and buried my face in his shoulder. For the first time since the study that night, I let myself cry, not from sadness, but from something bigger. Relief, fear, pride, all at once. We told the girls that weekend. We sat them down after dinner. No phones, just us at the table with cups of hot chocolate. Lily looked at me first. "Mom, are you okay? You've been weird lately." I took a slow breath. "Your grandparents and we've had a disagreement. A big one. They wanted me to run the hotels. I said no, so they stopped helping us financially." Sophia's eyes went wide. "Like, no more money at all?" I nodded. "No more. We're on our own now. There was a long silence. Lily reached for my hand. Are we going to lose the house? No, Marcus said firmly. We're not losing anything. We're just changing how we do things. I told them about Haven Homes then, the little inn in the redwoods, the dream of quiet places where people could rest and heal. I showed them the photos on my phone, the overgrown garden, the wide porch, the windows that looked straight into the trees. Lily tilted her head. It looks like a fairy tale house. Sophia smiled for the first time that night. Can we visit when it's done? I pulled them both close. You'll help me pick the colors, the pillows, everything. They hugged me tight. No tears from them, just quiet trust. That trust carried me through the hardest days that followed. Renovations started small. We hired a local crew, not the fancy contractors my parents always used, but good, honest people who worked with their hands and listened when I talked about warmth and feeling. We stripped old wallpaper, sanded floors until the wood glowed again. I painted walls myself some weekends, soft sage green in the bedrooms, warm cream in the common areas. My hands smelled like paint for weeks. I didn't mind. Words started leaking out, not because I told anyone, but small towns talk, and the hospitality world is even smaller. Someone saw the new sign going up, simple wood, hand-carved letters, Haven Homes, a place to rest opening winter 2025. A cousin of my mother's called me one afternoon. Elena, is this true? You bought the old Miller place? She was quiet for a second. Your parents don't know yet, do they? No, I admitted, not officially. She sighed. They will soon. Be ready. I wasn't ready. Not really. The first whisper came through my oldest friend, Claire. We'd known each other since college. She still worked in events for one of my parents' bigger properties. She texted me late one night. Your mom was asking about you today. She looked sad. Someone told her you bought a property up north. She didn't believe it at first. Then she went quiet. I think she's hurt, Elena, more than angry. I stared at the message until the screen went dark. I didn't reply right away. When I did, all I wrote was, "Thank you for telling me. I love her. I just needed to do this my way." Claire sent back a single heart emoji, nothing else. A few days later, my father called. First time in months. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Elena. His voice was low, controlled. Dad. A pause, longer than comfortable. I heard you purchased the Miller Inn. I swallowed. Yes, another pause. You didn't think to tell us? I was going to, I said softly. Soon. He let out a slow breath. You know we could have helped. Financing, connections, anything. I know, I said. But I needed to do it without help, to prove I could. Silence again. Then, quieter. We never wanted you to struggle, Elena. We wanted you to succeed. Our way. The words stung. Not because they were cruel, because they were honest. I'm succeeding, Dad, I said. My way. He didn't argue. He just said, Your mother misses you. We both do. I miss you too, I whispered. And I meant it. He hung up without saying goodbye, not rudely, just abruptly. Like he couldn't find more words. That call stayed with me for days. I worked harder, painted longer, answered every client email the same day. I told myself it was focus, but really, it was fear. Fear that if I slowed down, the doubt would catch up. Then came the first real test. A pipe burst in one of the upstairs bathrooms. Middle of the night. Water everywhere. The crew couldn't come until morning. Marcus and I drove up at 3 a.m. with buckets and towels. We mopped until our arms ached. The girls stayed home with a neighbor. When the sun came up, the floor was ruined in 2 rooms. Extra cost we hadn't planned for. I sat on the wet porch steps and put my head in my hands. Marcus sat beside me. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then, this is what building looks like. Messy, expensive, but we're still here. I looked at him, tears running down my face. I'm scared we'll lose everything. He took my wet hand in his. Then we lose it together. But I don't think we will. We fixed it, slowly, with more freelance money, with a small loan from my investor friend, one she offered without me asking. We kept going. My parents didn't call again. But I started hearing things. A supplier told me my father had asked about the Redwood property, casually, like it didn't matter. A former hotel manager, who'd gone independent, now said my mother had mentioned me at a staff meeting. She said her daughter is doing something beautiful, but she wishes she could see it. The words twisted inside me. Beautiful, but distant. I was building something real. Rooms that felt like breathing again. A garden I planted myself. Lavender, rosemary, little wildflowers the girls helped choose. Bookings started trickling in even before we opened. A writer needing silence. A couple celebrating an anniversary, away from the city. A woman recovering from surgery, who just wanted peace. Every email reservation felt like proof. I wasn't failing. I was rising. But the quiet between me and my parents grew louder, like a shadow that followed me everywhere. Then one crisp October afternoon, a black car pulled up the long gravel drive, slow, deliberate. I was on the porch, staining railings. I looked up, and my heart stopped. It was them. My father in his usual navy sweater. My mother in the cream coat she always wore in fall. They stepped out, looked around, saw the new sign, saw me. They didn't wave, they didn't smile, they just stood there, taking it all in. I set the brush down, wiped my hands on my jeans, and walked toward them, step by slow step. What do you say to the people who gave you everything when they show up unannounced at the one thing you built without them? Would they criticize? Would they leave? Or would something unexpected happen, something that changed the silence forever? Keep listening, because what came next, neither of us saw coming. They stood there, on the gravel, 30 feet away, my father with his hands in his pockets, my mother clutching the strap of her small leather bag like it was an anchor. The wind moved through the redwoods behind them, making that soft whispering sound trees make when they're alive and listening. I stopped a few steps from the car, close enough to see the lines around their eyes that hadn't been there last time I looked, far enough that I could still turn back if I needed to. No one spoke first. The silence stretched until it almost hurt. My mother broke it. Her voice was small, almost lost in the trees. "Elena, it's beautiful." I looked around, really looked, as if seeing it for the first time through her eyes. The fresh stain on the porch railings still smelled faintly of pine. The new gravel path curved gently toward the garden beds I'd planted with the girls. Lavender was starting to bloom in soft purple waves. The sign, Haven Homes, caught the late afternoon light and glowed warm against the dark wood. I swallowed hard. "Thank you," I said. It came out quieter than I meant. My father cleared his throat. He didn't look at the building right away. He looked at me, long, steady, like he was trying to recognize the woman standing in front of him. "We didn't come to argue," he said finally. "We came because we heard things from people, and we needed to see for ourselves." I nodded slowly. I didn't trust my voice yet. My mother took one step forward, then another. She stopped when she was close enough that I could smell the faint rose perfume she'd worn since I was a child. "Can we walk through it?" she asked. "Just look?" I hesitated, not because I didn't want them there, because letting them in felt like opening a door I'd spent months carefully locking. But I stepped aside. "Sure," I said. "Come." We walked up the steps together. The porch creaked under our weight, a friendly creak, the kind old houses make when they're happy to have company. I unlocked the front door with the key I kept on a simple leather cord around my neck, pushed it open. The smell hit first. Fresh wood, new paint, a hint of the cedar logs we'd stacked by the fireplace. Sunlight poured through the tall windows I'd cleaned myself the day before. It landed in golden pools on the wide plank floors. My mother gasped softly. Not dramatic, just surprised, in a good way. She walked slowly into the living area, touched the arm of one of the linen sofas I'd reupholstered in pale sage, ran her fingers along the edge of a wooden coffee table I'd found at an estate sale and refinished. She stopped at the bookshelf I'd built into the wall, already half filled with books I'd chosen carefully, poetry, quiet novels, a few travel journals. "This feels like you," she said. Her voice trembled just a little. "All of it." My father stayed near the doorway at first, arms folded, watching. Then he moved to the fireplace, looked up at the simple stone mantel. I'd hung one small framed photo there, not of the family hotels, of me and the girls planting the first lavender bush. All three of us laughing, dirt on our faces. He stared at it for a long time. Then he turned to me. "You did this alone?" I shook my head. "Not alone. Marcus helped. The girls helped. A friend invested. A crew worked with me. But, yes, the vision was mine." He nodded once, slow, like he was accepting a truth he hadn't wanted to face before. We walked through the rest of the house. The 6 guest rooms, each one different. One with deep blue walls and a view of the tallest redwood. One with soft peach and a little reading nook by the window. A small kitchen where guests could make tea at midnight if they couldn't sleep. A back porch with rocking chairs facing the forest. My mother lingered in every room. She didn't say much, just touched things. A quilt folded at the foot of a bed. A ceramic vase I'd thrown myself in a pottery class last year. A small painting of the ocean I'd done when I was 20. One of the few things I'd kept from my old life. When we came back to the main room, my father finally spoke again. "Why didn't you tell us?" The question hung there, not angry, hurt. I looked between them, took a breath that felt like it came from the bottom of my soul. "Because I was afraid," I said quietly. "Afraid you'd talk me out of it. Afraid you'd offer money and make it yours instead of mine. Afraid that if it failed, you'd say, 'We told you so.' And I couldn't bear that, not from you." My mother's eyes filled. She didn't wipe them away. "We would never say that," she whispered. "Not to you." My father looked down at the floor. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "We thought, if we took the support away, you'd come back. That you'd see the hotels were safer, easier. We thought we were protecting you." I felt tears burn behind my eyes, but I didn't let them fall yet. "I needed to know I could stand without the safety net," I said. "I needed to know who I was when no one was holding me up." Silence again, but this one felt different, softer, like something was finally breathing. My mother stepped closer. She reached out and took both my hands. Hers were cool, trembling. "I'm proud of you, Elena," she said. Her voice broke on my name. "I'm so proud it hurts." The tears came then, for all of us, quiet ones, the kind that fall without sound. My father moved then. He crossed the room in 3 steps, pulled me into his arms, tight, like he used to when I was small, and the world felt too big. "I'm sorry," he said against my hair. "I'm so sorry we made you choose." I held him back, felt his shoulders shake just once. "I'm sorry I shut you out," I whispered. We stood like that for a long time, the 3 of us in the middle of the room I'd built from nothing but dreams and stubborn hope. No one moved to let go first. When we finally stepped apart, my mother wiped her cheeks with the sleeve of her coat. She looked around again, smiled, small, real. "When do you open?" "Winter," I said. "December if everything stays on track." My father cleared his throat. "Will you let us come back for the opening?" I looked at them both, saw the hope in their eyes, the same hope I'd carried alone for months. "Yes," I said. "I'd like that very much." My mother reached into her bag, pulled out a small envelope, white, simple. "We brought something," she said. "Not money, not strings, just something we thought you might want." I opened it. Inside was a single key, old brass, heavy, attached to a tag that read, "The first key to the very first hotel your grandfather opened. We kept it all these years. We thought maybe one day you'd want it here." Felt the weight of generations in my palm. Not pressure, not expectation, just history, shared. I looked up at them, tears again, but happy ones this time. "Thank you," I said. "I'll put it on the wall, right by the door, so every guest who walks in knows this place was built on love." We stayed another hour, talking, not about business, about the girls, about Marcus, about the garden I still wanted to expand, about how the light changed in the redwoods at dusk. When they finally left, the sun was low. They hugged me again at the car. My father kissed my forehead. My mother held my face in her hands for a long second. "We love you, Elena," she said. "Always." "I love you too," I answered, both of them, and I meant it deeper than ever. I watched their car disappear down the long drive. Then I turned back to the house. My house. My dream. I walked inside alone, sat on the porch steps, held the old brass key in my hand, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel alone. But the story wasn't over yet. There was still one more chapter, one more quiet miracle waiting in the winter ahead. What happened when Haven Homes finally opened its doors and the first guests arrived, including two people I never expected to see walk through that door together? Keep listening. The ending is warmer than I ever dreamed. Winter came soft that year. Not the kind of winter that bites, the kind that wraps around you like a thick blanket, crisp air, short days, and the smell of wood smoke drifting from every chimney. Haven Homes was ready, or as ready as something born from so much heart could ever be. We finished the last touches in early December. Fresh white linens on every bed, small jars of homemade lavender honey on the nightstands, a stack of soft wool blankets folded at the foot of each sofa. The garden slept under a light frost, but the paths were swept clean. The old brass key from my grandfather hung on the wall by the front door, simple, shining, a quiet reminder that roots matter, even when you grow in a new direction. I spent the night before opening alone in the main room, fire crackling low, a cup of chamomile tea gone cold in my hands. I walked from room to room one last time, touched every doorframe, straightened every pillow that didn't need straightening. Then I sat on the porch steps in my coat, looking out at the redwoods standing silent and tall. I thought about how far I'd come, from that night in my parents' study, to this quiet porch under stars that felt closer than they ever had. I didn't feel triumphant. Not exactly. I felt whole, like every tear, every late night, every doubt had carved out space for something real. Opening day was December 15th. We didn't do a big event. No ribbon cutting, no press. Just a small sign on the gate. Welcome, we're open. The first guests arrived in the late morning. A couple in their 60s, gray hair, matching wool scarves, hands linked the whole way up the path. They'd driven 4 hours because the wife needed rest after months of treatments. She looked at the porch and smiled like she'd come home. Thank you for this, she said when I showed them their room. I almost cried right there. Then came a young writer with a laptop and too many thoughts. He asked for the quietest room. I gave him the one with the deep blue walls and the tallest tree outside the window. He didn't say much, just nodded once and closed the door gently behind him. By afternoon, 3 more bookings checked in. A single mother with her teenage son. They'd lost their home in a fire 6 months earlier. She hugged me when I handed her the key. I didn't know places like this still existed, she whispered. I spent the day floating between rooms, making tea, showing where the extra blankets were, asking if anyone needed anything. Marcus came up after work with the girls. They helped serve warm cider in the living room. Lily played soft violin pieces by the fireplace. Nothing showy, just gentle melodies that made the house feel even warmer. Sophia arranged fresh evergreen branches on the mantel. It felt like family, not just mine, everyone's. My parents arrived last, just before dusk. They pulled up in the same black car, but this time, the windows were down. My father stepped out first. He looked around slowly, at the lit windows, the smoke curling from the chimney, the soft glow of string lights we'd hung along the porch. My mother got out next. She carried a small basket covered with a cloth. When she saw me on the steps, she smiled. Small, real, the kind that reaches her eyes. We brought cookies, she said. Your grandmother's recipe. For the guests, if they want them. I walked down to meet them, hugged them both at once. No words at first, just holding on. Inside, the house was alive in the best way. Quiet conversations by the fire, the soft clink of mugs. Lily's violin fading into the background, like a lullaby. 3 months after opening day, the redwoods were dusted with the first real snow of the season. Not much, just enough to make the world look clean and new. Haven Homes had settled into a rhythm, not rushed, not empty, just steady. Bookings came in week after week, people who needed exactly what we offered. Silence, softness, time to remember themselves. I was in the small office behind the kitchen one gray afternoon, sorting reservations, making notes about which rooms needed fresh flowers. The mail had arrived earlier, mostly bills, a few thank you cards from guests who'd left the week before. I opened them one by one, smiling at the handwritten words. Then I found it. A plain white envelope. No return address. Just my name in careful, looping handwriting I didn't recognize at first. Elena Haven. Haven Homes, Redwood Grove. I slid my finger under the flap, pulled out a single sheet of cream stationery. Folded once. The paper felt expensive. Thick, smooth, the kind people use when the words matter. I read the first line and had to sit down. Dear Elena, my name is Margaret Ellis. I was your very first guest, the one who arrived with my husband on opening day in December, the one who had just finished 6 rounds of chemotherapy, the one who cried when you showed us to our room because it felt like coming home after being lost for so long. I stared at the page, remembered her face, pale, tired, but kind. Her husband holding her hand like it was the only thing keeping her steady. How she had sat by the fire every evening with a cup of chamomile, watching the flames like they were telling her a story only she could hear. The letter continued. I want to tell you what happened after we left Haven Homes. We drove home slowly. I slept most of the way. Real sleep, the kind I hadn't had in months. When we got back, something had shifted inside me. Not a miracle cure. The doctors still say the road is long, but the fear, the heavy, choking fear that had lived in my chest for over a year, it had loosened. Just a little, enough that I could breathe around it. Your home gave me that. Not the medicine, not the scans. Your home. I started walking again, short distances at first, to the mailbox, then around the block. One morning I woke up and realized I hadn't thought about dying the entire night. I thought about living instead, about the garden I wanted to plant in spring, about the books I still wanted to read, about the way my husband still looks at me like I'm the most beautiful thing he's ever seen. Because of you, Elena, because of the quiet you built, because of the way you listened when I said I just needed peace, because of the lavender honey on the nightstand and the blanket that smelled like cedar and home. I'm writing this letter because I wanted you to know, you didn't just open a guest house. You opened a door for people like me. People who arise broken and leave. Not fixed maybe, but mended enough to keep going. My husband and I have already told 3 friends about Haven Homes. They're planning trips next year. One is a woman recovering from a divorce. Another is a man who lost his son last winter. They need what you gave us. Thank you, from the bottom of what's left of my heart. Thank you for believing that rest is medicine too, with more gratitude than words can hold. Margaret Ellis. I sat there for a long time. The letter trembled in my hands. Tears fell onto the paper, making small dark spots on the cream. I didn't wipe them away. I let them fall. When Marcus came in later that afternoon, snow in his hair, carrying groceries for the weekend guests, he found me still at the desk. He saw my face and set the bags down without a word. Walked over, kneeled in front of me. What is it? He asked softly. I handed him the letter. He read it slowly. His eyes moved back and forth across the page. When he finished, he looked up at me. His own eyes were shining. She's right, he said. You didn't just build rooms. You built hope. I leaned forward and rested my forehead against his. We stayed like that until the light outside turned a soft blue of winter dusk. That evening, after the girls helped serve dinner to the current guests, I called my parents. First time I'd initiated the call since the opening. My mother answered on the second ring. Elena? Her voice was surprised, warm. Hi, Mom. I paused. I got something today, a letter from one of the first guests. I read it to her over the phone, word for word. She listened without interrupting. I could hear her breathing change, soft, uneven. When I finished, there was silence. Then my mother whispered, "Oh, sweetheart." I heard my father in the background. What is it? She told him quietly. Read parts back to him. Then he came on the line. His voice was thick. That's what we always wanted for our hotels, he said. Not the awards, not the 5-star reviews. Moments like that. People leaving better than they came. I smiled through fresh tears. I know. My mother took the phone again. We'd like to come up again, soon. Not to inspect, just to sit by your fire, to be guests for once, if that's okay. It's more than okay, I said. I'd love that. We talked a little longer, about the snow, about the girls' upcoming school play, about how the redwoods looked with white on their branches. Simple things, easy things, the way families should talk when the hard part is behind them. After we hung up, I walked outside. The snow had stopped. The world was quiet. I stood under the tallest redwood near the porch, looked up through the branches at the stars beginning to show. I thought about Margaret, wherever she was tonight. I hoped she was sleeping peacefully. I hoped she was dreaming of her garden. I thought about my parents, how far we'd come from that sunset in the study, how love can bend without breaking if you let it. I thought about Marcus and the girls inside, laughing over hot cocoa with the guests, about the little inn that had started as a secret dream and become something real, something that mattered. I pressed my hand to the rough bark of the tree, felt its steady pulse under my palm. "Thank you," I whispered, to the tree, to the house, to the path that had led me here. Then I went back inside, closed the door against the cold, joined my family by the fire. Haven Homes wasn't perfect. It never would be, but it was enough, more than enough. And for the first time in my life, I felt completely at home. But even stories this gentle have one final breath, one last reflection before the lights dim. What did I learn after all of it? The pain, the building, the reunion, the letter. What quiet truth did I carry forward? And what would I say now, if I could speak to the woman I was the day my parents cut me off? Keep listening just a little longer. The ending is coming, and it's full of light. Years have passed since that first winter at Haven Homes. Not many, just enough for the lavender to spread wider in the garden, for the redwoods to grow a little taller, for the house to collect more stories in its walls. The girls are grown now. Lily plays violin in a small orchestra in the city. Sophia studies design, my design, at the same college where I once changed my major in secret. Marcus still makes beautiful things on his computer, but these days he spends more time helping me run the place we built together. We've added 2 more small houses on the property over time. Nothing grand, just 2 more quiet places with their own gardens and fireplaces. Guests come and go. Some stay a weekend, some stay a month. A few have stayed longer, people healing from things words can't always name. We never turn anyone away if there's space and they need it. My parents visit often now. Not as owners, not as advisors, just as family. They sit on the porch in summer with iced tea. In winter, they warm their hands by the fire and tell the guests old stories about the first hotel my grandfather opened with nothing but hope and a hammer. My mother plants flowers with Sophia. My father helps Marcus fix things that aren't really broken, just needs a little attention. We laugh more than we used to. The silences between us are comfortable now. Not heavy, not empty, just peaceful. I still keep Margaret's letter in the top drawer of the desk in the office. I read it sometimes when the days feel long or the bookings slow. It reminds me why we started. Not for money, not for legacy in the way my parents once meant it, but for the simple, powerful act of giving someone a soft place to land when the world feels hard. Looking back, I see the woman I was that evening in my parents' study. 42, scared, hurt, holding on to a dream I hadn't dared name out loud. I remember how the words landed. "No more support, Elena. You want independence? Then be independent." How my chest caved in, how the drive home felt endless, how I sat in the dark kitchen afterward and wondered if I'd just lost my family forever. If I could go back and speak to her, that tired, determined woman staring at her cold tea, I would sit beside her. I would take her hand, and I would say this, very quietly: "You're not losing them. You're losing the version of love that came with conditions. The real love, the kind that bends, that learns, that says I was wrong, is still waiting on the other side. It hurts like fire right now, but this fire is forging something stronger. You, not the hotels, not the money. You." I would tell her, keep going, even when the pipes burst at 3 a.m., even when the bank says no, even when the silence from your parents feels like a wall. Keep planting the lavender. Keep painting the walls the colors that feel like breathing. Keep saying yes to the small, scared dreams. Because one day, a woman named Margaret will write you a letter. And in that letter, you'll see what you couldn't see then. You weren't just building a house. You were building healing. You were building proof that it's okay to choose yourself. I would tell her one more thing, the most important thing. Forgiveness doesn't always come fast. Sometimes it comes in pieces. A phone call, a hug on the porch, a quiet, "I'm proud of you." But it does come if you leave the door open, not wide, just cracked, enough for love to slip back in when it's ready. That woman, the one from the study, she's still inside me. I carry her gently now, like an old friend who taught me everything I needed to know about courage, about boundaries, about what family can become when everyone stops trying to win. Haven Homes isn't famous. It won't make headlines. It won't win awards with gold plaques. But every time a guest leaves with lighter shoulders, every time a family sits by our fire and talks without agendas, every time my parents look at me and smile without any but behind it, I know we built something that matters more than any chain of 23 hotels ever could. Life isn't about the size of what you leave behind. It's about the depth of the softness you offer while you're here. If there's one thing I've learned, the quiet, true thing that stays with me every single day, it's this. Sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money or property or a family business. Sometimes it's the courage to walk away from what's safe and the grace to find your way back to love on your own terms. That's the legacy I'm passing to my daughters. Not buildings, not bank accounts, but the knowledge that they can choose themselves and still be loved. Deeply, fully, without strings. This was my true story. The one about a daughter who said no and found yes in the quietest places. About parents who let go and discovered their arms were still big enough to hold her. About a house in the redwoods that became more than walls and windows. It became home for everyone who needed one. If this story touched something in you, if it reminded you of your own quiet battles, your own dreams you're still afraid to name, please like, share, and subscribe. There are so many more real stories waiting to be told. Grandma stories, daughter stories, stories of ordinary people doing brave, beautiful things in the background of life. Thank you for staying with me until the end. You were here when it hurt, and you're here now when it heals. Good night, and may you always find your own soft place to land. This was my true story. Subscribe for more grandma stories. Time has a way of softening the sharp edges of memory. These days, when I walk the paths around Haven Homes, I don't think about the struggle first. I think about the small, steady miracles that grew out of it. The lavender is everywhere now. It spills over the garden beds in thick purple waves. In summer, the air smells like it. Sweet, grounding, alive. Guests pick little bunches to take home. They press them between pages of books they read by the fire. They say it reminds them of the peace they found here. I never get tired of hearing that. Lily comes back most weekends when she's not touring. She plays for the guests sometimes. Nothing formal, just her violin filling the living room like warm honey. People close their eyes and listen. Some cry quietly. Not sad tears, the kind that come when something inside finally loosens. She tells me she learned that from me, how to hold space for feelings without trying to fix them. Sophia has her own small studio now, not far from here. She designs the new rooms when we add one. Her touch is bolder than mine, deeper colors, unexpected textures, little surprises like hidden reading nooks or windows that frame the exact spot where the sun sets between two trees. When she was little, she used to draw pictures of houses that looked like hugs. Now she builds them. I watch her work and feel like the circle is complete. Marcus and I still sit on the porch most evenings. We don't talk much. We don't need to. He reaches for my hand when the sky turns that soft pink-orange I loved as a child. We watch the light fade together. Sometimes he says, "You did this, Elena." I shake my head. We did this. Because it's true. Every late night, every worried calculation, every time we chose faith over fear, we did it side by side. My parents come up at least once a month. They've slowed down a little. My father walks with a cane now, but he still insists on helping Marcus stack firewood. My mother brings jars of her homemade jam, apricot, always apricot, because it was my favorite when I was small. She sits in the garden with me and we pull weeds together. No big conversations anymore, just quiet company, the kind that says everything without words. One afternoon last spring, she looked at me while we were kneeling in the dirt. Her hands were covered in soil. Mine too. She said very softly, "I used to think legacy meant something big, something people could see from far away. Now I think it's this, the way the light falls on your garden, the way a stranger finds rest here, the way our granddaughters know they can dream without apology." I didn't answer right away. I just reached over and brushed a smudge of dirt from her cheek. She smiled, the same smile she gave me when I was 6, and showed her my first drawing of a house. That was enough. There are days when I still feel the echo of that bold hurt, a quiet ache, when I remember the study, the sunset, the words that felt like goodbye. But the ache doesn't cut anymore. It's more like an old scar you notice when the weather changes, present, but no longer painful. It reminds me how far we've walked, how much grace it took to meet in the middle again. I've learned that love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the silence after the storm, the slow return of calls, the small offerings, a basket of cookies, an old brass key, a hand reaching across a table. It's the courage to say I was wrong and the grace to hear I forgive you without needing to explain it all. If I could leave one thing behind for anyone listening to this story, it would be this. Don't be afraid to choose the path that feels like yours, even when it means walking away from the one everyone else expects. The people who truly love you will find their way back. They may take time. They may need to see you standing strong on your own first. But real love doesn't disappear. It changes shape. It learns. It comes home softer, wiser, ready to sit beside you instead of standing in front of you. You don't have to earn it by being perfect. You don't have to prove it by succeeding on someone else's terms. You just have to keep showing up as yourself, scared, determined, human, and leave the door cracked open. One day, someone will walk through it. Maybe not the way you imagined. Maybe not when you're ready. But when they do, you'll realize the waiting wasn't wasted. It was preparation for a love that finally fits. Haven Homes keeps growing quietly. More rooms, more stories, more people who arrive heavy and leave lighter. I still answer every reservation email personally. I still make the first pot of tea in the morning. I still sit on the porch and thank the trees for listening all these years. This isn't the end of the story. Stories like this don't really end. They just keep unfolding. In new gardens, in new guests, in new generations who will one day hear how their grandmother said no to safety and yes to a life that felt true. And when they ask me how it all happened, I'll tell them the same thing I'm telling you now. It started with a hard goodbye. It continued with stubborn hope. And it lives on in the soft moments no one sees. The hand held, the tear wiped, the quiet I love you spoken after years of silence. That's the real legacy. Not the buildings, not the name on the sign, the love that learned to let go and found its way back home. This was my true story, the one about a woman who lost the safety net and found wings instead, about parents who let go of control and rediscovered their daughter, about a little place in the redwoods where broken hearts come to mend. If you stayed with me through the pain and the healing, is any part of this touched the quiet dreams inside you? Please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more real-life stories told from the heart. Grandma stories, stories of ordinary courage, stories that remind us we're never truly alone. Thank you for listening, truly, from the deepest part of me. And may you always have the courage to choose your own soft place in the world. This was my true story. Subscribe for more grandma stories. The seasons turn gently now at Haven Homes. Spring brings wildflowers that bloom without anyone asking them to. Summer fills the garden with laughter from families who come to rest. Fall paints the redwoods in gold and amber. And winter still wraps everything in that same soft quiet that started it all. I'm older. The lines on my face tell the story of every year since that night in the study. Some lines are from smiling too much. Some from crying when no one was watching. All of them are mine. All of them are earned. I still wake early most mornings. Before the guests stir, before the coffee is brewed, I walk the grounds alone, listening to the birds wake up and the trees breathe. Sometimes I stop at the lavender bed, the one the girls and I planted that first spring. I kneel down, touch the leaves, and thank them silently for growing anyway. That's how I feel about the whole journey. We grew anyway. My parents are in their late 70s now. They sold the last of the hotels a few years back. Not because they had to, because they wanted to. They travel a little, they garden a lot. They come here more than anywhere else. Last Christmas, we all gathered in the main room, fire roaring, lights strung along the beams. The girls, now young women, played carols while Marcus and my father argued good-naturedly over how to carve the turkey. My mother sat beside me on the sofa, our shoulders touching. She leaned over and whispered, "I never thought I'd see this day. All of us together, like this. No expectations, just love." I squeezed her hand. "I never thought I would either," I said. "But here we are." She looked at me with eyes that still shone like they did when I was little. "Thank you for not closing the door forever." I kissed her cheek. "Thank you for knocking when you were ready." We didn't need more words than that. We'd said them all over the years, in quiet conversations on the porch, in letters we wrote but never sent, in the way we learned to listen again. The betrayal that started it all, the cutting off, the ultimatum, feels like a distant memory now. Not gone, just softened, like a stone smoothed by years of river water. It doesn't cut anymore. It just reminds me how strong we all became. I think about that woman in the study, the one who walked out with her heart in pieces. If I could hold her now, I'd tell her, "You didn't lose your family. You lost the version of family that asked you to be small. The real one, the one that grows with you, is waiting. It's waiting in the quiet moments, in the forgiveness you give yourself first, in the courage to say, 'This is who I am,' and mean it." I'd tell her, "The pain is real. Let it be real. But don't let it be the end. Let it be the beginning. Let it carve space for something deeper, something yours." And I'd tell her the one truth that changed everything for me. Love doesn't always look like agreement. Sometimes it looks like space. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like two people walking separate paths, until those paths meet again in a garden they both helped plant. That's what happened to us. We walked separate for a while. Then we met in the middle. And the middle was better than either of us imagined. Haven Homes isn't a business anymore in my mind. It's a promise kept. A promise to every guest who walks through the door carrying something heavy. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to heal. You're allowed to become who you were always meant to be, even if it looks different from what your family expected. To my daughters, I leave this. Choose yourselves, even when it's scary. Even when it means saying no to the people you love most. Love will find its way back if it's real. And if it doesn't, you'll still have yourself. And that's enough. To my parents, wherever their hearts are now, in the garden, by the fire, or somewhere beyond, I say thank you. For the love that tried to hold me too tight. For the love that learned to let go. For the love that came back softer, wiser, and wide open. And to you, whoever you are listening to this right now, if you're carrying your own version of that night in the study, if you're afraid to choose yourself, if you're wondering if forgiveness is possible, hear this. It is. Not always quickly, not always easily, but it is possible. And when it comes, it feels like breathing after holding your breath for years. This was my true story, the one about a daughter who said no, and discovered the yes that had been waiting inside her all along. About parents who let go and found their way back to a love that didn't need control. About a quiet house in the redwoods where hearts learned to mend, one soft day at a time. If this story stayed with you, if it touched the part of you that's still healing, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more grandma stories, more real lives, more quiet courage, more reminders that we're never truly alone. Thank you for walking this path with me. From the pain, to the healing, to the peace on the other side. Good night, sweet soul. May you always find the strength to choose yourself, and the grace to love the ones who come back. This was my true story. Subscribe for more grandma stories.